Certainly there has been very little time to process Jim Harbaugh departing the program. I, for one, I don't want to say in a sense of disbelief, but it's hard to imagine Jim Harbaugh not being on the sidelines, even though we saw it for 6 games. Nonetheless, that is our reality. And I asked you to ask me questions. That's right. After about a month and a half, the Michigan Mailbag returns. We're going to take your questions on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Thursday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire, through USA Today Sports Media Group. Let's get to it without any further ado, because it's been a long time coming since we've done a Michigan Mailbag. Starting with the leaders and best, James Crudup at James Crudup 6. If the reports that John U. Bacon referenced are true, that the Michigan side waited until the 11th hour to give Harbaugh the language he wanted, does Michigan need to move on from Ward Manuel? Harbaugh isn't the only coach who has walked or had controversy. What changes to the program do you think will be made if Moore is the guy? What changes do you think should be made? This is going to be a pretty constant question. Even Josh Barr at Jadicki, which is the next person, and he has another question. Actually, I'll just lump these two together. According to the Bacon report, why did Michigan wait till the last minute to agree what Jim Harbaugh wanted? Why does Michigan always seem to do things the most difficult way possible? You have to understand, and I tried to prime you guys for this. What Jim Harbaugh was asking was pretty close to unprecedented. I mean, Bill Self had certainly gotten a similar contract to what he was asking for. But at that point, yeah, it was uncertain whether or not the NCAA was going to come down hard on Kansas or not. But just kind of given everything, now you have to keep in mind that Michigan feels that it hadn't really broken any rules in either of the NCAA cases. I can see where the NCAA can disagree, and certainly all of the rival fans out there disagree. But I can tell you Michigan doesn't necessarily feel like it broke any rules, and certainly Jim Harbaugh didn't break any rules. And that goes for both NCAA investigations. And yet the NCAA's come down hard on them. He's already been suspended 6 games, all of that stuff. So there's really kind of no telling what the NCAA is going to do, because it seems like it wanted to make Jim Harbaugh a sacrificial lamb in this case. So with that in mind, imagine a scenario where the NCAA says he's suspended for a year, or he has a 2 or 3 year show cause, and then Michigan's on the hook for, $13-ish million a year for each of those. And Jim Harbaugh's like, screw this, I'm just going to go coach somewhere else, or whatever it is. Michigan's just on the hook. I mean, I'm probably in that case, if he coached somewhere else, then they wouldn't be on the hook. But that was a relatively unprecedented thing. Before, it was kind of the financial aspect, and Michigan got to where it did. Some of that was kind of just getting it to a point where they felt comfortable with that. I also have to keep in mind that it felt to them like they were in a good place, and then things kind of changed, right? The price kind of went up, so to speak. Not even the actual price, just the price for trying to keep him. The things like want to start the contract at the beginning of the NFL cycle, all of that kind of stuff. It's not an easy decision across the board. Certainly there were people in the administration that are like, heck yeah, let's do it, because it's Jim Harbaugh, and look at what the program has done, the football program, and that's the front door of the university. But there's, when you keep in mind that the university is more than just the football program, there were people that were pushing back, being like, we're not going to do this. We're not going to be on the hook for this. That's absurd. Like, we want Jim Harbaugh, but like, at what cost? So I see both sides of it, and I understand that people read that. And also keep in mind, like, that in a lot of ways to me, and it wasn't, the report was from Angelique Shingelis. I know everyone's referencing John U. Bacon, but it was from Angelique. It's kind of like, that's the Jim Harbaugh side of the negotiation. Like, hey, we wanted to come back, but, they wouldn't meet it until the last possible second. I mean, the last possible second is still meeting it, right? He very well could have, if he really wanted to come back, if that was, it doesn't matter if he's in final negotiations with an NFL team. He hasn't put ink to paper at that point. He could just very well say, you know what? I appreciate your time. I'm so sorry that we got down this road. I just got everything I wanted from Michigan. I'm gonna stay there. It's to me, it's pretty clear that he wanted to go to the NFL, as evidenced by his constant flirting with the NFL each of the last couple of years, having said that he wanted to chase a Lombardi trophy. Okay. So, I don't think that Michigan is necessarily doing things the hard way there. I just think that they're being cautious. Not every school is going to necessarily be that cautious. You can disagree with it if you want, but I'm just here to tell you that's kind of what it was. What changes do I think the program will make if Moore is the guy? Well, number one, Josh Henschke, my dear friend, reports that Moore is going to expand the recruiting department, change the scope, really try to attack NIL, all that kind of stuff. That to me is the biggest change that should be made. And so that's a good thing. I mean, as far as schematics, we'll get to all that with other questions that are coming up here, including the next one. But to me, that's the biggest change that needs to be made, because to me, it's almost like Michigan's a little lazy. Not the recruiting department itself, but like Jim Harbaugh, he does go out on the road, but he's not like, I've had talks with high school coaches over the years where I remember it was 2020 before the pandemic started, when it was this kid's getting called by Nick Saban, this kid's getting called by Ryan Day, this kid's getting called by Kirby Smart, and he's getting called by Matt Dudek. Excuse me, what? Like that. So just being more aggressive in recruiting in general, I think, is probably the best thing. And I think Sherrone will certainly be that. And I think he'll need to be that, right? I think he'll need better players to go along with scheme and game plan, all that kind of stuff. And strategy. I think they need that. My brother in metal, Michael Wolf at MWolf21. Do you think the offensive scheme stays the same or similar under Moore? Does it change up a bit? I think it will stay mostly the same, because number one, he was running the offense. And also, if it ain't broke, why fix it? As long as you have a defense, as long as you can run a complementary team. That's the thing that Michigan does that like people aren't giving enough credence to, is it runs a complementary style of football, right? There have been games where the offense really put the defense in a good position, right? The defense, did its job, with 3 and outs and things. But I think like when you look at a lot of different games, the goal was, hey, get some of these teams to get to where they can't run the ball anymore. And because we're up 2 or 3 scores, they now have to start passing the ball, and then the defense can tee off. That's kind of what happened in the national championship game. So I think that just playing a complementary style of football, if it ain't broke, why fix it? You know what I mean? Not to say, I sound like Ryan Day after Urban Meyer left, but he did change things when it came to game preparation and stuff like that. So there's that. Jonathan Joseph at JJoseph2156. Who do you expect to leave with Harbaugh, and who would you promote to offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator, assuming Minter goes with him from within or look outside? I would try to keep the gang together as much as possible. I don't know, to me, what I would do at the moment, assuming you can keep Mike Hart, who has higher aspirations, Mike Hart has not been an offensive coordinator. I don't know that maybe because he's been involved in the run, being a run game coordinator, you can elevate him. The way that I would do it is probably elevate Kirk Campbell to pass game coordinator. Mike Hart is run game coordinator, and that's your essentially offensive coordinator, so to speak, kind of like it was when Harbaugh, just throughout the years, how he's had it. Make them co-offensive coordinators. That's probably what I would do. Minter is the likely departure along with Jay Harbaugh. Those make sense. But we'll talk about that more. And if you have to go for another defensive coordinator, to me, I probably look outside. I don't know that I have a name for you. But if you do promote from within, I would probably go Mike Elston personally. That's just me, though. Finishing us out in segment 1, Spencer Whitmore. At Spencer Whitmore, I'm happy for Jim. I'll pull for him in the NFL behind the Lions. If Sherrone is the head coach and Minter leaves, guesses at the offensive defensive coordinator. Of course, I just covered that. My guess, OC, Mike Hart, DC, Klink, or Elston. I don't think it'll be Klink. That's just my gut feeling on that. But obviously, you want to retain him as the co-defensive coordinator and keep him going. That would just be where I am at with that personally. And that's not an offense to him. It's just what I think. Anyway, we're going to continue on here in just a moment, taking more of your questions. But before we do that, passion, drive, and patience, what brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need and the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So many questions, really backloaded, a lot of the same things. I didn't categorize them by, I categorized them by name, as I always do, by person, not by, do you fit into the leaders and best, the Victors Valiant, or the Blue Crew? So the Blue Crew is just anyone, and obviously multiple question askers get to be in the Victors Valiant, the mostly day one people who've been asking questions since the podcast launched in 2018 get to be in the Victors Valiant. So there's gonna be a lot of repetition. I'll give you a name, a shout out. There's some questions that I eliminated just because they were not really questions. So let's start with the Victors Valiant. Jim in the North. I'm a big Sherrone Moore fan. Do you think he can keep developing the O-line like in the past? I do think so, because it's one of those things where it's like, when you have a head coach that's a quarterback, you're like Jim Harbaugh, works a lot with the quarterbacks. You have a defensive head coach, he works a lot with whatever position. It's just kind of like when you've got Jesse Minter, he works a lot with the defensive backs. Mike McDonald worked a lot with the linebackers. So yes, I do think that the offensive line can still be, I would imagine that Grant Newsome would be elevated to offensive line coach, and that he would still be kind of mentored by Sherrone Moore. I think that that's how that would go. Can Moore hold on to Hart, Bellamy, and Herbert? I'm assuming that means. I think it's possible. Yeah. I mean, Mike Hart obviously has higher machinations, I think, but I could see him, especially for it being hey, Michigan's in transition and I love Michigan. I am not under Jim Harbaugh anymore. I'm going to help this transition at least for one more year. I could see him staying on. Absolutely. But who knows? I'm not the one at William Cawthorn 9. Do you think the offense will look completely different? Obviously, we already covered that. Do you in your heart of hearts think we'll keep the current staff intact? Again, we kind of covered that. But yes, I mean, could there be defections 100%? I would keep everyone that you can if I'm Michigan. And from Sherrone Moore down, keep everyone you can, and that includes Jesse Minter. I did have a conversation with someone with a name that you all know, and with two people. One person that probably a lot of you know, maybe not everybody, but is high up in the thing, and someone that literally every single one of you know. And I asked, what are the chances of keeping Minter? And I just kind of got we love Jesse, so hopefully he stays. That could indicate, I know that sounds cryptic, that could indicate that Minter that they're going to at least try to make a run at him. We'll see. Brett Byer at Brett Byer 6. Will Sherrone be able to reach into the Harbaugh family connection Rolodex for a defensive coordinator if Minter leaves? I hope so, right? Like Jim, hey, dude, you can't just completely come and pillage everything either. I mean, you can, but and you can sit there and say business is finished, mission accomplished, and then be like, I got Michigan back to where it needed to be. But yeah, you did, but then you're setting it up as at a disadvantage, especially with the schedule coming up this year. So I would hope that he would extend that, and I would assume that he would. Is Sherrone intending to try to replicate the same culture and player development and head coaching methods as Harbaugh? Will he veer from it at all? I'm sure there will be some elements to where he might see something a little bit differently. But I mean, as a first-time head coach and then a guy who was a game day coach while Jim Harbaugh ran things during the week, I very much think that Sherrone would probably try to at least keep things the same. I wouldn't be surprised if year one, you do things exactly the same. Then year two, you start to try to change things a little bit, right? Put your little stamp on it to some degree. Say hey, that didn't work, or hey, this could work better, that type of thing. What a really kind of one of the real kind of underrated losses would be Jay Harbaugh, because I think he's been kind of an innovator and a guy who's been really forward thinking in his entire tenure in Ann Arbor. So that will be kind of a big loss. But I've certainly they've had a collaborative effort, and I feel like getting guys who are going to be on the same page and able to do some of these things would be really big for them. So yeah, I think that's that. Perry Mitchell at Perry Mitchell 08. How's Harbaugh leaving change the outlook of the future, especially 2024 with so much talent remaining on the roster? I assume OL and DL recruiting and development can remain as is with Elston and Moore remaining in Ann Arbor. I think that, I mean, it kind of depends on the staff and keeping people from defecting. I think that's the big thing. Chris Ballas reported today, which I would have reported it today, at least on the podcast. He said $800,000 was given to a specific player. I know which specific player, not given, but offered to a specific player to depart for another school. I'll add to that. I was told $1 million. I mean, maybe it was a rounding up from the person I talked to, and it was an ACC school that was trying to get him to defect. So I think that you got to keep your roster intact. That's going to be difficult. That happened before Harbaugh even left, by the way. It's the tampering is going to be out of control, especially now. But yeah, I think with 2024, it doesn't necessarily change the outlook for the future, because if Sherrone can keep the thing running, keep the same defense, keep the team, kind of doing what it's doing, keep the culture, keep all of that stuff intact, and find a quarterback, whether it's someone on the roster or through the transfer portal, and elevate through recruiting and NIL, I think that there's a really good shot that the dynasty could essentially continue. Think Oklahoma, Lincoln Riley for a little while. I know, Bob Stoops, it's been a long time since he had won a championship, 2003. And, went to some BCS games and what have you. But, Lincoln Riley, when he took over, it was, we're just going to keep this thing rolling. And I think that that's probably the intent of Sherrone Moore kind of leading things. The Rican Raider at Hamstand 87. I have a hard time getting worked up about those. I don't know what those are. Harbs wanted the NFL and accomplished everything he said he would here. Am I odd for taking that stance? I don't really know what you're saying. Maybe I missed something, but I copied everything over, and that was the only thing I had from you. Maybe you mean hard time getting worked about Sherrone. I'm not really sure, so sorry. Brand at Big House Go Blue _ might be a loaded question with everything floating around. Is Ward to blame? Seems there have been 3 prominent coaches at Michigan who have left during his tenure. All right, let's set the record straight here. Now, could Ward have maybe had a little bit more foresight with some of these things, at least in terms of Jim Harbaugh? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think it would have kept Jim Harbaugh here? Not necessarily. John Beilein he wanted to try the NBA, and obviously it didn't work, but he wanted to try the NBA. Eric Bakich took a pay raise and went to a more prolific school where it's easier to win. You kind of can't blame any of the 3 for leaving, right? Leaving Michigan to go to the pro ranks, no matter which way you put it, that is, I understand that we all look at Michigan and say, why would you ever want to leave Michigan? But, if you're competitive and if you want to say hey, maybe I can do it at the highest level. If you're Jim Harbaugh's case, your brother has a Lombardi trophy. You have a national championship trophy. You came just a couple yards from winning that Lombardi trophy instead of your brother. Why wouldn't you want to go and give it another shot, right? To him, in his mind, it was mission accomplished, right? He was able to notch off one of his top goals. Once he came to Michigan, his top goal was win a national championship. Okay, done. What's the next thing he wants to do, right? Next thing he wants to do is win a Lombardi trophy. You kind of can't blame Ward for that. Now, do I think that Ward maybe could have done more in at least some of these circumstances? Sure. Hindsight's 2020. And I know that a lot of people have been complaining about Ward for a couple of years now. But that was also partially from hindsight. When Harbaugh went and started looking at NFL jobs in 2021, it was how dare Ward do what he did with his contract? Guess what? Him doing what he did with Harbaugh's contract was probably a big incentive to change things drastically, on top of, because Harbaugh, very well knowing how kind of stubborn he was coming out of 2019 in particular, he was very stubborn about, there were a lot of coaches on that Michigan staff that wanted Don Brown gone. Harbaugh, nope, Don Brown's the dude. And 2020 goes just as bad as it does. There's still a good chance that Harbaugh says, yeah, this wasn't a good year, but he's still that dude. So I think that when it was like, hey, you're getting your pay cut, you're coming on your hands and knees. You've got to earn your salary. You've got a $4 million base, but you can get up to $8 million. You got to earn it, though. I think that changes the priority. And I know a lot of people blame Ward for that, but at the same time, like, that was maybe one of the best, like, motivating tools that has been. Again, I'm not saying Ward's played everything perfectly. I'm not even saying he's the best fit for Michigan, kind of given everything, but he's delivered a lot of money. He's been obviously slow on NIL. That's not great, but he's delivered a lot of money. He's delivered a lot of Big Ten championships. He has made a not great hire at this juncture in Juwan Howard. And I hate to say that because Juwan's my boy, but it doesn't, that doesn't mean that he is the Antichrist as some make him out to be. We'll continue on with that here as we go along, because we got more of those questions, even though we're running short on time. James Kovalevsky at Coach_Kovo. What becomes the ongoing NCAA investigation? Does the threat diminish with Coach Harbaugh gone? The slate wiped clean, so to speak, or could there still be a serious threat of punishment? Does the national media coverage change with Sherrone Moore at the helm instead of Jim? I think the national media coverage absolutely can and will change, because Jim was just a polarizing figure, and they were going to find ways to keep making him more polarizing. I imagine Burgergate's gone, completely gone, right? He served a 3-game suspension. He's the culprit. Hey, Hugh lied to the NCAA, but it was what they believe. I don't believe that personally, but based off of more things that I've learned in the last couple months. But he's gone, so you can't really punish him. The Connor Stallions thing, that I could still see them doing something, but I think it would be more probation. I mean, maybe they take a hardline stance and vacate wins or something like that. Highly doubt it. Highly doubt it. They can't vacate the championship, completely separate entity. But I mean, I think it makes it harder to punish Michigan now, right? Because they don't have their scapegoat in Jim Harbaugh. Clark at Blue for Life 8. I'm assuming you'll cover this with the Harbaugh leaving episode, which was last night, by the way. But if you don't, you think Minter follows him to the Chargers. Also, I do, but I would throw like a max contract at him and be like, yeah, I dare you to leave. Also, would you hire from within to place him or look elsewhere? We obviously covered that already. Jacob Shavaria at Shavaria. Name your head coach, DC, and OC. Obviously, we covered that already. Odds of Ben Herbert staying. I think that the odds of Ben Herbert staying are pretty good. And if I'm Michigan, I'm like, don't you dare take Ben Herbert. We need that continuity of all things. I understand you think you can win, but you can get someone else that can do that in the NFL, okay? It's more important at the college level than it is the NFL level to have a strength and conditioning coach like Ben Herbert. Do you fault Ward or Ono for not agreeing to the 3-person panel? Neither. I just think it's a weird request. Do you think that's what made Jim leave? No, I think he wanted to chase the Lombardi Trophy. Do you think the players were left in the dark the whole time? No, I think they've been very well aware that this was a likelihood, if not a possibility. I feel like Jim should have told them weeks ago. I think that's long. No one's surprised, right? You weren't surprised. They weren't surprised. Finishing us out in segment 2, Marcio Brenes at mbrenes11. If Moore is head coach, who will coach the offensive line? I do believe that will be Grant Newsome. If Minter and Jay are leaving too, who will replace them? Who knows, man? Moore hasn't even been hired officially yet. One great attribute by Harbaugh was choosing great assistants. How do you think Moore will fare because he doesn't have a lot of experience as head coach? I have no idea. Your guess is as good as mine, man. Your guess is as good as mine. All right, we've got a ton more questions. We're going to go kind of lightning round with most of them here, and we'll do that here in just a moment. All right, the Blue Crew, let's get to it. Michael at Midwest Michael 1. There's a temptation to be reactionary. What amount of blame is fair to place on Ward and or other leadership for Harbaugh leaving? On one hand, it's clear Jim had genuine interest in the NFL. On the other hand, Michigan waited until the last minute to agree to his terms. Again, his terms were they were pretty bold, and Michigan did agree to them, and it might have been last minute, but Michigan did agree to them. You got to get a lot of people to sign off on that, right? On having kind of outlandish terms at a university like Michigan. I don't blame really Ward for Harbaugh leaving because listen, Harbaugh he went and tested the NFL waters 3 straight years. It's clear he wanted to go to the NFL and he went to the NFL. RB at Bucky Moto. Can you share what you heard over the time from the contract negotiations, from the MSU week through NCAA allegations to January 24th? Why did Michigan not just give him everything he was looking for from the get-go? Why wait until the last minute while he's in LA? I covered obviously most of that, but as far as what I heard over time, I mean, there was just a lot of optimism. I didn't speak to a lot of people about it. I dealt more with the NCAA investigation stuff. There was a lot of optimism from a colleague of mine that he was going to sign in the bye week, and then obviously all of the Connor Stallion stuff happened. Then after that, there was the Connor Stallion stuff, which kind of galvanized the department, got everyone on the same page, got everyone pushing in the same direction, and from there they were kind of off to the races. But Jim Harbaugh, I mean, he's had a beneficial offer. Again, remember when he hired Don Yee, the terms kind of changed, right? What he was asking for changed. So they had to kind of scramble. You have to keep in mind that things changed on his end too. I'm not absolving the athletic department fully or the university brass, but like Jim Harbaugh himself changed in this. He basically made it as hard as possible for Michigan to give him what he wanted. Michigan still came up with it in the last moment, and he still said, I'm going to the NFL. I don't know what else to tell you about that. I know like the narrative is it's Ward in Michigan, and Michigan would have done whatever it could have done. They could have kept him. I'm here to tell you that that's probably not what would have happened at that point, right? Like if he went to the NFL, it was because he wanted to go to the NFL. That's been it. I'm sure he would have been offered more money at Michigan than he's getting offered by the Chargers. With more money going to assistants than is what is offered by the Chargers. David Gottesman at DGoddess75. If Moore is given the job, who's the most important to keep on staff, Herbert or Minter? Ben Herbert. I think Minter is crucially important, but like he does not want he don't want to be here. He wants to be in the NFL. So if you are able to keep Minter, it's a rental. Herbert you can keep around for 10 more years, and he can be a Michigan legend in his own right. How much will Harbaugh's departure affect recruiting for 2024 players, including those already enrolled? I don't think it will affect them at all, to be honest, unless if it's not Moore, then maybe that changes. But if it's Sherrone Moore, I think that they've been preparing for this for a while. It's been pretty clear by the things that Jim Harbaugh said that he'd been preparing for this for a while during the season and even before the season, and no one was shocked that he left. Just Jeff at Jeff 122380. I got one. Did crying Ryan Day and OSU lead to Jim Harbaugh leaving the University of Michigan? If so, is it wrong for me to wish the worst? I'm thinking of Meteor dropping on him. No, I just think he wanted to go to the NFL. Shane at Seamus0914. Any thoughts on potential DCs if Minter does leave with Harbaugh? I'd give a strong look to, what's his name? Danton. I don't remember his name. Danton Lynn. And I'd give a strong look to, and I'm the only reason I'm putting that up there is because I've seen other people say it. That's literally it. I know nothing about him, but Jim Leonard would be the guy I would look at. And then, see if Jim can come up with a guy that maybe, ask on, any more than Ravens assistants, That would be it. Or is Dave Aranda still at Baylor? Go for Dave Aranda. He runs a similar system. Mindy at M for U of M. Bum Jim is leaving, but I won't miss the annual stress. Next man up, Team Sherrone. Also, what happened to Stahlbaum? Stahlbaum's still out there. He just doesn't have any more information to drop, right? And here's the thing. Let me explain a little bit about Stahlbaum's. I should say they, because it's multiple people that run Stahlbaum's. They have seen things with their own eyes. It doesn't mean they have things in their possession. So they can't be like, here are the things. They've had conversations, seen things with their own eyes, the multiple people. I've met both people so I'm telling you, there's 2 people that are involved in that, apparently. And, but they don't have anything else to push forward at this point. They've put everything out there. So that is what it is. Tim at 1988 456 next DC. Might be you. Who knows? Ted Rogers at _LOM. Ain't sweating it. Like the remaining Big Ten schools, maybe. We have Coach Moore. Go Blue. Amen. Drew at D Norris 86. What are you hearing on Ben Herbert? Michigan's making a strong push for him. It kind of sounds like he's probably going to stay, but I haven't heard anything beyond that. Abby Oliver at Abby_Oliver_MI. How does a Harbaugh departure impact recruiting? I think it will actually be better. You have to keep in mind that Jim Harbaugh's biggest, like the point where he's had 2 points in which he himself was going to be a recruiting fixture. 2015 and 16 when he was fresh out of the NFL. And right now. But otherwise, like the name recognition only really probably worked the most coming out of 2015 and 16 when he first got hired. So I think it can have a positive impact because Sherrone can be like, hey, I was a giant part of this. I beat Ohio State. I beat Penn State. And, if he can help revolutionize recruiting and all of that, then that's all the better. Like as far as NIL, expanding department, all that stuff. Admiral Cockfield at ADM_Cockfield. Is there anything insiders are right about? Yes, there is plenty. So here's the thing, man. I know who you're referring to. You're referring probably to Chris Ballas, and I'm going to come here and defend him right now. Sometimes when you're really close to a situation, things maybe change, right? Like, or you hear things from the right people and they're like, oops, my bad, right? It's like I said before, when it came to like me telling you a long time ago, like, hey, Xavier Worthy, he's going to be on campus. There's nothing to worry about. I got a person that every single one of you knows who told me that. Well, the person that told me that was Josh Gaddis, and Josh Gaddis was wrong. That doesn't mean, yes, the insider, me, in that case, ends up being wrong, but you would believe it if you were being told that by the person you're being told that by. With Chris Ballas, he was told by 3 people Harbaugh is in the building, and then NFL people say he's not in the building, and I'm not going to get into what he did and all of that, but obviously he corrected it. Chris Ballas is so close to things, and the people I know, some of the people he talked to, they're exactly the people that if they told you, you'd be like, these NFL insiders are wrong. They don't know what they're talking about. So sometimes when you're really close to the situation, things can get wrong, right? That's just how it goes. So I vehemently defend Chris Ballas. I think he's the best of the best, personally. Matthew Adams at MGO Stallions. I love it. Is Sherrone Moore really the guy? Can he staff a program? Can we still lose Herb? Who, if not Jesse Minter, can we please step at the freak up in NIL and portal and not act like we won and or a one and done program? I'm just going to leave that one alone. Alex at Alex_the_T. Are news reporters still looking into the PI firm that caused the whole Michigan debacle? I believe so. But I said this on said this on a message board earlier today. Last I talked to someone, I haven't talked to anybody about it in a long time, about a month-ish. And the last I had talked to someone about it, they said, I know what happened. And it was from a major outlet. And they were like, this reporter says, I know what happened. The problem is I don't have the paper trail to be able to prove it. Now, I understand there's a lot of people that say, well, it turns out that ESPN didn't really have the paper trail for everything when it came to some of these other things. Well, they kind of did, but they just kind of spun it to make it look the worst possible, right? Now, obviously, when it comes to the Uncle T and all that kind of stuff, you can say what you will about it, but that is what the NCAA presented to Michigan, and then Michigan did things out of that, and then we heard about it the day after, or the day of, or whatever, after the NCAA. So that was what the NCAA presented. So just no one has, as I saw someone say, shocker, criminals know how to cover their tracks. That's kind of what the case is, right? Doing some nefarious deeds. From what I've heard, tracks are kind of covered, but I can tell you with a great deal of certainty that, let's see, at least 3 names of reporters who you know of who are on a national scale believe what I have told you about this. But they just don't have everything that they need to be able to go to print. And then there's more out there that are trying to work on it as well. Madmen at Madmen Ringer. Why can't we blame Ward for Harbaugh not signing a contract extension? Seems to me that if Ward would have showed love and given the man what he wanted in November, he wouldn't have entertained leaving. I covered that pretty strongly. But, keep in mind what he wanted kind of changed when he hired Don Yee. The things that he wanted changed. So they were, they had a contract offer out. And you have to keep in mind, Michigan has to navigate the NCAA of it all, right? Like, they can't hamstring themselves. I know you can sit there and say, oh, they should do it anyway. But what happens if he's just gone for 2 or 3 years and you have no, like, you essentially no backup plan and all of your money is gone? It's hard to navigate that. Carter Carlin at Carter Carl 53947. Biggest question we all want to know: did Michigan give Jim Harbaugh everything he wanted, or did administration mess this up? I've covered that ad nauseum. Third and Wolverines at third _ blue. Is Minter leaving? Probably, but we'll see. And are there any recruits or current roster trending to leave? Not that I know of at this juncture, but it's early yet. They're going to have 30 days. I'm sure there'll be some surprises here and there, maybe even a big name. That's me not having any specific knowledge and just conjecturing. It's just how things go with this. But if you can get Minter to stay, I think there's a good chance that you retain everybody. Because I don't think any offensive guys are going to leave because they already love Sherrone. It's a matter of keeping the essentially head coach of the defense around. And that's easier said than done. All right. Way over time, but thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. That's going to do it for us today. We will be back soon. Peace.